Right, 10 o'clock. So good morning, everybody. Welcome members, officers and members of the public to the Environment Cabinet panel on the 9th of November. I'll need to start the meeting as usual by making an announcement, and it is COVID-19 attendance at this meeting. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Council will be holding this meeting electronically. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in an electronic capacity, and there's a link on the Council's website for them to do so. Members of the meeting are asked to keep their microphones switched off until called to speak, and to switch their microphones off once they have finished speaking. Cameras may be left on throughout the meeting if members wish. Cameras should be switched on if and when speaking in the meeting. To indicate a wish to speak, members should use the raise hand function, and use of the meeting chat function is exclusively for voting. At the end of the debate on each item of business, there will be a vote. Members should vote using the meeting chat function by indicating for, against or abstain, and I'll declare the result after each vote. I will have breaks of at least 15 minutes after every 2 hours, or as appropriate. So I'm now going on to membership changes for this meeting, and we have Judy Billing substituting for Tina Bartwas, Michael Muir for Caroline Clapper, Tim Williams for Adrian England, and Dee Hart for Lewis Cocking. Do we have any apologies? Is everybody here?
No apologies, Eric, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So going on to the next thing I need to ask you, which is whether or not any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests or declarable interests in relation to the agenda items on this meeting. Anyone want to declare anything? No? Okay, thank you. I'm now going to ask members to introduce themselves. I'll start with me. So I'm Eric Buckmaster. I'm the Executive Member for the Environment, and I represent Sawbridgeworth Division. And I'll now go to Judy first.
Thank you, Eric. My name's Judy Billing, and I'm the County Councillor for Hitchin North and leader of the Hertfordshire County Council Labour Group. I'm here today as a very poor substitute for Tina Bartwas, who has a far more agile mind than I.
I'm sure not, but thank you, Judy. Ben. Ben here? Oh, there you are.
Hi, Eric. Thanks. Good morning. Yes, my name's Ben Crystal. I'm a councillor for Hertford All Saints for the Green Party, and I'm leader of the Independent Green Group.
Great, thank you. And now Dee.
Good morning, my name is Councillor Dee Hart and I represent the Waltham Cross Division, Borough of Broxbourne. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Now Steve Jarvis.
Hello, I'm Steve Jarvis. I'm the County Councillor for Royston West and Rural, and I'm the Liberal Democrat spokesperson for the environment.
Great, thank you. Jeff?
Yes, good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members. I'm Jeff Jones, member of this panel. I'm the Conservative member for Buntingford.
Okay, thank you. Graham?
Yeah, Chairman, good morning. Graham McAndrew, Conservative member for Bishop Stortford Rural.
Great, thank you. Michael?
He's not in as yet, Chairman.
Oh, he's not here yet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rena.
Good morning, Chairman. My name is Rena Ranger. I'm the Conservative member for Rickmansworth East and Oxley Park.
Great, thank you. And Phil.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Councillor Phil Williams. I'm the Lib Dem representative for Three Rivers Rural.
Thank you. And Tim.
Good morning, everybody. It's Councillor Tim Williams here. I'm the Lib Dem member for Woodside Stanborough, which is in the northeastern side of Watford.
Great, thanks, Tim. And Steve. Wortley this time.
Good morning, Chairman. Morning, everyone. My name's Councillor Steve Wortley. I'm the Conservative councillor for Cheshunt Central in the Borough of Broxbourne.
Great, thank you very much. Right, before we go to the minutes, I just want to mention one thing in relation, just so you're aware, in relation to item 6, the officer for the report will be signing, and we'll have a signing interpreter who will be doing that for him. So just to make you aware of that. We're now going on to the minutes. I invite you to agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of September. If you're okay with that, could you agree via chat, please? Yeah, that looks like everyone, so we can take that. Carly is agreed?
Yeah, that's agreed, Eric.
Okay, thank you. And next item is petitions. I don't think we have any, do we? No?
No petitions, thank you.
Okay, so the first substantive item is the Minerals and Waste Local Plan and Development Scheme. And the presenter of this one is Chris Stanek, who's Minerals and Waste Planning and Policy Team Leader. So welcome to Chris.
Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, councillors. Yes, item 3 on the agenda this morning is a report which asks members of this Cabinet panel to recommend that the emerging Minerals Local Plan and Waste Local Plan be brought together into a single Minerals and Waste Local Plan, and that a new timetable for plan preparation be approved. As the Minerals and Waste Planning Authority for the area, the County Council has a duty to prepare and keep up to date its Minerals and Waste Local Plans. These plans ensure that there is a steady and adequate supply of mineral to meet demand, as well as a network of waste management facilities to manage the county's wastes. The plans also provide the relevant development management policies the Council uses in the determination of planning applications for minerals and waste management development. Work began on a review of the Minerals Plan in 2015, and during that time the emerging plan has been through several rounds of consultation, the most recent being the proposed submission plan in January 2019 under Regulation 19 of the 2012 planning regulations. In September of last year, a report was brought before the Growth, Infrastructure Planning and Economy Cabinet panel outlining a revised timetable for the preparation of the plan. The report also advised that following consideration of the responses received at the previous consultation and the subsequent changes required to the plan, officers considered it necessary to consult again on the plan under Regulation 19 before submitting the plan to the Secretary of State for examination. As highlighted in the body of the report being presented this morning, a significant number of changes are required to the plan, which would therefore result in a plan that is markedly different to the previous proposed submission plan. These include changes to policies and their supporting text, extending the plan period, which needs to be 15 years from the point of adoption, and a recalculation of the sand and gravel provision rate and reserves. Various baseline data have also been updated, resulting in numerous other changes to the plan. Following further consideration of the nature and number of these changes, and the likely impact this would have on a second proposed submission consultation, submission, and subsequent examination of the plan, officers now consider that the plan should not proceed to a second Regulation 19 consultation. Rather, the plan should be amended, republished and consulted on again under the earlier Regulation 18 stage. The Council has also been reviewing its adopted waste local plan. Work started on this in 2017, and the draft plan has been through 2 rounds of consultation under Regulation 18, the most recent being in January of this year. following consideration of the responses received, as well as further updated evidence-based work, and the publication of the Council's Local Authority Collected Waste Spatial Strategy, considerable changes are now required to the plan and its overall approach, requiring further consultation before proceeding to the proposed submission Regulation 19 stage. These changes include extending the plan period, revising the plan's approach to achieving net self-sufficiency, acknowledging the Council's intended procurement of contracts to manage local authority collected waste externally for the majority of the plan period, changes to the approach to safeguarding sites and the method for directing new waste management development to the most appropriate areas, and addressing concerns surrounding the management of inert wastes. Much of the inert waste arising in the county would be used in the restoration of mineral workings, essentially filling in the void space created by mineral extraction. Allocated mineral extraction sites provide the certainty needed for the management of such wastes, and without them, questions remain as to how the Waste Local Plan would deal with this waste stream. As both emerging plans are essentially now at the same stage in their preparation, and in order to overcome many of the issues identified in this report to ensure the risk of challenge at examination is minimised, officers recommend that both emerging plans be brought together into a single Minerals and Waste Local Plan. It should be noted that moving to a single Minerals and Waste Local Plan at this stage does not mean starting from scratch. On the contrary, much of the work done so far will be retained, not just the evidence base supporting the plans, but the draft policies in the plans have already been through several rounds of consultation and have been refined as a result. Because of this, the timetable for the preparation of the joint plan will be reduced, with final adoption of the joint plan being no later than had the Council continued to progress with separate plans. National policy is also clear that plans should be succinct and avoid the unnecessary duplication of policies. Of the 17 policies in the Emerging Waste Local Plan, for example, around a dozen of these are essentially a duplication of policies in the Emerging Minerals Local Plan. A single local plan would therefore remove this duplication, provide greater conformity with national policy, and simplify the overall development plan for the area. It is also worth noting that by preparing a single local plan, the Council can avoid costs in the region of £160,000, owing largely to the fact that only one examination will be required, rather than two. As well as the Emerging Minerals and Waste Local Plans, the Council has also been preparing a Waste Facilities Design Guide supplementary planning document. This document is intended to provide guidance on the design of new waste management facilities and is linked to policy in the Emerging Waste Local Plan. As such, it cannot be adopted until the adoption of the Waste Local Plan. To further simplify the overall plan for the area and the process of consultation and subsequent adoption, officers are recommending in this Cabinet Panel report that the content of this supplementary planning document be brought into the joint plan itself as an appendix. In the meantime, however, it is proposed that the Waste Facilities Design Guide supplementary planning document be redrafted as interim policy guidance and placed on the Council's website so that officers and applicants have some guidance to refer to until its content is formally adopted through the local plan. That interim guidance document will, however, be brought before this Cabinet Panel for approval in the spring next year and is therefore not a consideration in this report. So to summarise, this report asks members of the Environment Cabinet Panel to recommend to Cabinet and Council that the Emerging Minerals Local Plan, Waste Local Plan and Waste Facilities Design Guide supplementary planning document be formally withdrawn and that a new development scheme be approved outlining a revised timetable for plan preparation and that work commences on a single Minerals and Waste Local Plan. Thank you for your time, councillors, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. Very good summary of the situation. A lot of thought gone into it, and I know members have, prior to this, been given an opportunity to have a briefing. So the development scheme is something that's needed anyway, but this is an opportunity to bring two plans together and also to go back a stage as well in terms of consultation. So we've got some questions now. So first is Steve Jarvis.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with the principle of combining the two plans. That does seem to be a sensible thing to do. It particularly because of the connection between them in terms of the disposal of inert waste in mineral sites. And it appears to me that there isn't a significant penalty for doing that at this stage. But I do have 3 questions about the process, what we're actually going to do. And I get the first one. Do you want me to ask all 3 at once, or should we do them one at a time?
Well, do all 3. If they're not long, just do them and then we'll...
Okay, so the first one relates to decisions relating from the council's decisions as the waste disposal authority. And I'm not, my understanding was the council was supposed to operate kind of in 2 completely separate ways. You know, the decisions it made to the waste disposal authority were not supposed to influence its decisions as a waste planning authority. And indeed, well, yes, probably only that way. The other way around, it probably should. So I'm a little concerned about the statement that we're going to change the waste plan because of decisions we made as a waste disposal authority. I'm not quite sure how that's supposed to work. The second is around, is also around the waste plan, and that's there are some figures put in there sort of as the volumes expected to arise, and I'm not clear what assumptions we're making either about the growth agenda or about the success of waste minimisation activities when we're planning forecasting volumes of waste. And the final one is regarding the sustainability impact assessment form that just relates to having a plan. It doesn't actually relate to the sustainability of the plan, and I accept that's probably the right thing at this time. But how in the plan process will we ensure that the plan delivers the council's sustainability objectives? So those are the 3 questions.
Great, thank you. So to summarise then, so it's the relationship between this and the Waste Disposal Authority, the assumption on the volumes and the sustainability impact. Do you want to have a go at those, Chris?
Yeah, just taking the first question then regarding the separation between Waste Disposal Authority and Waste Planning Authority function. Yeah, I think there is no conflict there between the 2 functions. You know, we do operate separately. Of course, we do talk to each other with regards to the preparation of plans. And prior to this year, the waste planning policy team was under a different portfolio, the growth and planning portfolio. We now come under the same portfolio, but I understand there is no conflict there between the 2 functions.
Yeah, we did check that with our legal officer, and that was the case. Okay, the second one then is on the volume assumptions.
Yeah, regards to the assumptions of waste forecasting, we do publish, we have published a capacity gap report that's available on the council's website. That looks at all the different wastes arising for the base year, and then projects those forward, taking account of things such as anticipated increase in recycling rates, growth populations, etc. So the full details are in that report. That's the capacity gap report, and we will update that report and publish that alongside the draft Minerals and Waste Local Plan in the summer of next year. That will have the full details in there. Regarding the question about sustainability objectives and whether the plan will meet Hertfordshire's sustainability objectives, there is Sustainable Hertfordshire Impact Assessment at Appendix 2 of this report, which outlines that briefly. And it also mentions that the plan will be subject to a full sustainability appraisal, including strategic environmental assessment and a full habitats regulations assessment. So all of the potential impacts that may arise through the implementation of the policies in the plan will be assessed through that framework to ensure that the plan is prepared and operates in a sustainable way and will meet the objectives of the Council's Sustainable Hertfordshire strategy also.
Okay, so Chris, those will be published with the Regulation 18 consultation papers.
That's right, yes. But prior to that, in the spring of next year, we will also publish a sustainability appraisal scoping report, which will set out the overall objectives of the sustainability appraisal and the objectives of the plan, and the overall framework that the sustainability appraisal will use for assessing the policies in the plan.
Okay, can I suggest then that that's probably the subject of a briefing for members then at that point? So I think that would be really useful to do that. Yeah.
Yes, certainly.
You're okay with that, Steve?
Just one supplementary. I assume the capacity gap report updates will come to panel at some stage, will they?
Yeah, we can certainly report on those in the next panel report that we bring, yes.
I think it's important to understand what the impact both of growth and of waste minimisation is going to be on those numbers. I think that's something we ought to be taking an interest in.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you then, Steve. We're going to Ben Crystal now.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, that was very helpful and interesting. I've got a rather sort of simplistic question after Steve's questions. Just kind of for my own mind, I'm just trying to understand how sort of the kind of growing piles of inert waste kind of corresponds to the holes that we dig in the ground. If you had a 1 million tons of 1 million tons of inert waste in a pile, and you had a hole out of which we'd extracted sand and gravel, and we'd extracted 1 million tons of sand and gravel from that hole, would that pile of inert waste fit in that hole? I'm just trying to understand the relationship between, you know, we're reading about the kind of the amount of sand and gravel we extract, and then with these piles of amounts of inert waste. Is it a roughly 1-to-1 or
interesting question?
Good question, Councillor Crystal. Thank you. It's not roughly 1-to-1. The material that's extracted is obviously densely packed aggregate. The material that goes in, depending on the size of the material, obviously has void space within it, so not as much material by weight would go into void space as what was taken out. So we look at volumes as well, rather than just weight of inert material to go in.
So it might be 2-to-1, or that kind of thing. Do we have a rough estimate or not?
I'm not sure if the exact figure. It is in the supporting evidence that we've got supporting the plan. I can't off the top of my head recall the exact calculation that we use. It's not as much as 2-to-1. It's somewhere between 1 and 2.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. Just a connected question from me then, Chris. So where we have some of the major development schemes and there would be sand and gravel on the sites, would we be expecting developers to make use of the resource while they're on the site and then infill with any inert material into those areas? Is there a connection there?
There is, Chairman, yes. We, as Minerals and Waste Planning Authority, we comment on a lot of district and borough planning applications, and where there is an opportunity to extract material prior to development taking place, then we will try and encourage that to happen, either through a requirement for prior extraction, or we may ask that developers seek to explore opportunities for opportunistic extraction on site. So we do encourage that, and we have policies in the plan that will encourage that.
That's good. Okay, thank you. Well, I don't see any other questions. I think it's a big subject, but I think it's been explained very well. So if there are no questions, we're going to go to the vote. I need to read out the recommendations in full, so just bear with me. So panel are asked to, 1, consider this report and recommend to Cabinet that Cabinet recommends to County Council that the County Council, in accordance with Section 22 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, the Act, formally withdraws the emerging minerals and waste local plans and draft waste facilities design guide supplementary planning document. And the next, in accordance with regulations 15 and 27 of the Town and Country Planning, Local Planning England regulations 2012, agree to the publication of a statement to this effect on the County Council's website, informs each of the bodies or persons who made representations on the documents of the presence of this statement, and ceases to make any documents relating to the withdrawal plans available. Sorry, to the withdrawn plans available. In accordance with section 15 of the Act, agree to the publication of a new minerals and waste development scheme, which is at Appendix 1, setting out the timetable for production of the new minerals and waste local plan, and agree to the commencement of work on the new minerals and waste local plan. And then 2, in line with the revised minerals and waste development scheme, a further report will be brought before this Cabinet panel early next year to recommend the publication of the minerals and waste local plans sustainability appraisal scoping report for statutory consultation, and to recommend approval for publication of a waste facilities design guide. So I think I've got that all out. So would you show your agreement or otherwise, please, in chat? Thank you. Are we all done? Everyone voted? Just wait for Carly to confirm. Yeah. I think we can safely say that that's agreed then. Okay, that being the case, yeah, Carly's just confirmed that. We're now moving on to item 4, which is the Hertfordshire Authority Monitoring Report and Local Aggregate Assessment. And we'll now go to Emma Chapman, who's the Planning Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Emma.
Morning. So yeah, my report is an informative item that my team have bring into panel at the end of each year for a number of years. It sets out the main updates that are coming from my team's 2 annual monitoring reports, and these include the local aggregate assessment and the authorities monitoring report. We have a statutory duty to prepare both of these reports. So the duty to prepare the AMR is set out under the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, and the requirement to prepare the National Planning Policy Framework is set out within the requirement to prepare the local aggregate assessment is set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. I'll start by just going over the main points to note from this year's AMR, which can be seen at Appendix 1 of the panel report. So this year's AMR covers the period from the 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. Its main purpose is to monitor the implementation of the adopted local plan policies and to also set out progress with local plan reviews. This year's AMR states that the County Council determined 7 county matter planning applications. This consisted of 4 minerals planning applications and 3 waste planning applications. It also does note 1 county council planning application that was approved, and this was the application at 2 Inroad Depot for a recycling centre. The reason that that's in there is because the planning application is for waste uses and it was determined using the policies in the adopted waste local plan. The AMR also reports on the implementation of the adopted policies, and it states that out of the 22 adopted waste local plan policies, 4 were not used to determine planning applications, and out of the 19 adopted minerals policies, 3 were not used to determine planning applications. It's common every year for a group of policies not to be used, and that's 99% of the time simply because they haven't been applicable to the planning applications that have been being determined in that year. The AMR does also report on the progress made with reviewing the Minerals and Waste Local Plan documents. So this year's AMR reports progress against the current adopted Minerals and Waste Development Scheme, which was the 2020 scheme. It states that the draft plan, the Waste Local Plan reached draft plan stage in early 2021. And it also notes that the Emerging Minerals Local Plan was supposed to reach a second proposed submission consultation in this year as well, but that didn't happen. Part 3.2 of the AMR does explain that the adopted Minerals and Waste Development Scheme will be updated this year, and it states that this will be done to reflect a more up-to-date timeline and that details of this will be provided in next year's AMR. In terms of the main updates coming out of this year's local aggregate assessment then, so the headline figures show that the total sales of sand and gravel in 2020 declined, and this is what we did anticipate this, and it's most likely due to the coronavirus pandemic and the temporary slow and shutdown in the construction sector, and then the knock-on effect that this had on the demand for sand and gravel. The reserves of sand and gravel and the land bank also declined throughout 2020. The reserves at the end of 2020 stood at 6.8 million tonnes, and the land bank at the end of 2020 stood at 5.9 years. So the decline in these figures is a result of just the general continued sand and gravel sales, but also it's a result of there being no newly permitted reserves added to our figures in 2020. So during 2020, there were 2 minerals planning applications that were presented to Development Control Committee. The first being land at Hertford Aerodrome, that was refused on 24th of September 2020, and there's a public inquiry scheduled for the site starting this month. Also, land adjoining Cooper's Green Lane, Hatfield Quarry, that was presented to Development Control Committee on the 22nd of October 2020. That site was approved, but the approval was subject to a Section 106. So what that means is we can't add the reserves from that site onto our figures yet until the decision notice has been issued. So whilst the reserves of sand and gravel and the land bank are low, these 2 sites, land on Hatford Aerodrome and land adjoining Cooper's Green Lane, have the potential to significantly boost our figures. And as such, next year's LAA will set out any details or any updates surrounding these 2 sites. The LAA concludes that the review of the Hertfordshire Minerals Local Plan is being undertaken to address the shortfall in supply, and it's intended that the sites in the emerging plan are in there to address this shortfall and will meet the county's future needs for sand and gravel demand. That brings me to the end of the main updates from both of this year's 2 annual monitoring reports. Lastly, I'd just like to ask the panel to please note the contents of the reports and acknowledge that both will be placed onto the County Council's web pages. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Emma. That's very good. So we'll now go to any questions. Judy.
Yes, it has been pointed out to me, I have to say, that on target 7, a minimum of 90% of all construction, demolition, excavation waste. It's a fine aspiration, but I understand that we're actually getting further and further away from that target rather than closer to it. And so there is a question about its realism and how we bridge that gap between the aspiration and our actual performance, which is getting worse, I believe. Is that right, Emma? Have I got that right?
Go on, Emma.
Yeah, so the target, the information reported against that target does state that the figures are slightly high. That 90% is a national target. I don't know if Chris, you have any updates in terms of this particular matter that you could bring in.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you, Emma. Thank you, Chairman. I'd have to look into that and get back to Councillor Billing with an answer to that.
You okay with that, Judy?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other question from you? No? Okay. Ben?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I hope it's okay, Emma. I've got 3 questions. Thanks for the report, by the way. So my question. Shall I just go through the questions and
yeah, how many have you got?
Just three, no more than
Oh,
three.
fine, you go ahead then, yeah.
Thank you. I just wondered whether, is the advice given by the East of England Aggregates Working Party to county, is that on a matter of public record? My first question. Second question is on page 68 of the agenda pack, paragraph 6.56, it states, that's agenda, sorry, it might be page 168, apologies, I can't read my writing. It's either 68 or 168, whatever one's in this item. It states that draft waste plans include policies which will work to encourage the reuse, reduction and recycling of CDE waste. Do we have any room to change the word encourage to actually require? So are we able to require the reuse, reduction and recycling of CD&E waste? I think I probably know the answer, but I'm hoping. And my final question, it links back to Judy's question, which I think was kind of really interesting. So this target 7, table 7. So this states, as Judy said, 90% of all CDE waste to be diverted from landfill by 2026. I just kind of was looking back at the table in the previous item on page 23, which shows the growth in inert waste, and that states that the inert waste will be put into restoration of mineral extraction sites. I'm just trying to understand if landfill is the same as restoration of mineral extraction sites. Are those viewed as the same thing?
Yeah, I suspect there's a difference there, Ben, but let's hear about that. Emma, are you going to answer these, or?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. So, yeah, with regards to the first question surrounding the East of England Aggregates Working Party, so yes, every meeting that we have with the party is minuted, and you'll be able to find those minutes on the party's website. With regards to question 2, about policies being able to require the reduction and reuse of CD&E waste, I don't think so, unless anyone in my team can advise otherwise. I think that the wording most likely is pulled down from national policy, the wording encourage. It's not really something that we have the power to enforce anyway, so I would assume that it would remain as encourage. And lastly, around target 7. So what was your question again?
The difference between inert waste and what would normally go into landfill. So I guess my view is it would be restoration, and you would want inert waste to go into the quarries in order to enable the restoration to take place.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the quarries that are extracted from sand and gravel will be filled with inert waste, so CD&E waste, and restored using that type of waste. Whereas landfill, the last remaining landfill in Hertfordshire is Westmill, and once that site closes, there won't be any more landfills of that nature in Hertfordshire that are filled with the sort of residual type backbin waste.
Okay. Just to be absolutely clear, the landfill referred to in target 7. So the CDE, the inert material going into landfill, is different from the use of CDE going into restoration of mineral extraction sites. Maybe I'm not asking my question very clearly. One of them, we're saying we're going to get 90% by 2026. One of them says we've got this looming gap, 1.36 million tonnes by 2030 or whatever. So if they are the same thing, if landfill is the same as restoring, as putting stuff into mineral extraction sites, then they are the two. There's absolutely no way we can hit those targets, can we? We can't hit the 90% because of this massive gap, which I think was what Judy made the point. Is that correct? Are they the same? Where you put the stuff is the same. You can call it landfill or you can call it restoration of minerals, but they're the same.
Sometimes they're used interchangeably. inert waste, CD&E waste, can also go into sort of landfill sites like Westmill, but then it's also used for restoration purposes for mineral sites as well. I'm going to have to check with my colleague that wrote the AMR what sort of landfill Target 7 is specifically referring to, because I want to answer your question correctly. So I'll get back to you on one.
It's probably best to clarify that. So I think that's the best way to handle it. So thank you for that. Judy's hand is still up. Do you want to?
It's up again, actually.
Oh, again. I'll go to
Because
Steve.
although I denied it at the time you asked whether I had any other questions, I knew that I did have another question, but I had to find my correct place in the documentation. So can
I go to Steve first, because he was.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So this arises from the discussion we've just had. I mean, my understanding was that there was an objective to meet some of the sand and gravel supply targets by recycling construction demolition waste. And I believe there is at least one plant in the county that does that. And I'm not quite clear how that fits in with the rest of the plan. Clearly, that removes the amount of this material that's available for restoration of quarries, but it presumably also removes the amount that needs to be extracted. So I'm not clear where we track that, and indeed what we're doing to ensure that we maximise the amount of aggregates that are recycled from construction waste, because I think there is an opportunity to do that and not dig the holes in the first place, rather than dig the holes and then fill them in. So how does that fit in?
Is that another one of those encouragement elements, Emma?
Yeah, so the Minerals Local Plan will include a policy on encouraging the recycling of CD&E waste to reduce the need on primary extraction of sand and gravel. This is actually monitored within the local aggregate assessment. So every year we monitor the amount of CD&E waste which is reprocessed and then effectively can be used in replace of that primary material. So yeah, this is something that will be highlighted in the Minerals Local Plan, and is something that we're working towards. We recognise that the amount of recycled CD&E that we use at the moment is minimal, and it's something that we're looking to increase. But yeah, I'm not sure what else I could.
So that will be within the minerals plan. And is it part of, perhaps I've got this wrong, is it part of the design guide as well, or not? Is that a separate thing?
I think that's a completely separate thing. Yeah. Steve, sorry, I've just recalled something that you said. You said there's no sites for recycling CD&E. I
think there is one, isn't there?
Yeah, there is a few, but the main and largest one being the site land. I've forgotten what it's called. It's in Hatfield, well in Hatfield. Eco Aggregates, it was called. So there are a few in the county which will be safeguarded through the new Minerals Local Plan as well.
Okay, fine, thanks.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for that, Emma. Judy, back to you now.
Thank you very much. And this question relates to 6.52 on Agenda Pack page 166, which is a bit of a kind of just cast off really, and a helpless comment, it seems, that the County Council is unable to monitor the reuse and recycling of CD&E waste on construction sites, and you receive very limited information. Is there anything we can do about that, rather than just saying, ho-hum, can't do that?
It's tricky because it's something that we can't enforce as an authority. At the moment, what we do is we ask for site waste management plans, and in these it sets up details where site operators are looking to recycle or reuse their waste or minimise the waste. But we do receive limited information on this. Through the emerging plan, we're looking to circular economy statements, which are sort of very similar to site waste management plans, but this is sort of something that's a bit of an issue for us and something that we can't enforce as an authority.
Okay, so there's lots of stuff we can't enforce as an authority, but we still kind of do it and try it. Is there anything we can do here in the sphere of influence rather than enforcement?
I'm wondering, Judy, because lots of us are also district councillors, and I think actually it's the local planning authority. So when planning approvals are going through, or the applications are coming in, it's a good thing to check, isn't it?
Good point. Yep. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Are there any other questions? I don't see any more hands up. So we'll now go to the recommendation. So it's that the panel consider and note both the AMR and the LAA and acknowledge that both documents will be placed on the County Council's website. So could I have your opinions on that, please, in chat? So if you're agreed, please type agreed or for. Everyone managed to vote? Yeah, it looks like that's agreed, so from the message I've received. So thank you for that, Emma, and again, thank you to Chris. Right, we'll now go on to item 5. They're all interesting reports. I found this particularly interesting as it's the review of the first year of Recycling Centre Direct Delivery. So we've got Matt King here who's going to take us through it. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, panel. This will actually be a joint presentation from myself and my colleague Andy McGinn. There's a fair bit of content in the report. The purpose of the report is to provide members with an assessment of the first full year of operation by the Council of the Recycling Centre service, having assumed control on the 1st of October 2020. Members will see that the challenges relating to operating during the pandemic, both pre and post the Council's direct control of the service, are set out in section 4. Recycling centres were closed during the initial lockdown in March and April 2020, and the majority were reopened in a phased manner between May and July 2020. Dealing with the pent-up demand from residents, DIY activities and the necessary safety restrictions at each site led to persistent queues across the network. Figure 1 in the report shows that when compared to other local authority networks, the residual waste volumes fell less and then grew more than other comparators. This is attributed to the comparative degree of restrictions in place to manage demand. Many local authorities chose to restrict types of vehicle or waste they would permit access to, employ booking systems or other management systems. Whilst there are pros and cons to any demand management policy, it's clear that the pressure on the front line during this part of the pandemic was acutely felt in Hertfordshire. As can reasonably be expected, high tensions were on occasion evident, largely as a result of the persistent queuing across the network. Performing the functions under sustained pressure did impact on staff, who were potentially further unsettled by the uncertainty of a change in employer. Section 6 of the report details efforts made with the support of HR colleagues to reassure transferring staff. All staff were provided with one-to-one consultations prior to transfer so that questions and concerns could be heard. Since taking on the service, more staff have been recruited to frontline roles and a range of training packages have been developed and delivered. Efforts to improve support to and communication with site staff were made through a site staff survey, which directly led to the production of monthly staff newsletters. This details elements such as performance, progress, and developments within the Recycling Centre service and the wider council. It remains early days in our delivery of the service, but performance appears to be heading in the right direction. A staff representative group has been established, welfare improvements are scheduled, Wi-Fi and further IT improvements are planned, and staff are being better supported in their roles, with campaigns on respect the workforce and body-worn video cameras being rolled out across the network. Overall, the response from transferring staff has been positive, and we are ambitious and cautiously optimistic about future years of operation. So to take you through further detail, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Andy McGinn, who joined us in February this year as team leader for the Recycling Centre service, to take us through the rest of the report. Thank you.
Hello, Andy.
Good morning.
Have you got two devices on, Andy?
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, councillors. Apologies for the feedback there. I think we've got it. As Matt has already said, the first year of service delivery has been challenging. However, a number of developments have already been made, some in progress and others planned for the future. In section 7 of the report, there are details of a number of applications that have been produced bespoke for Hertfordshire County Council's Recycling Centre's website. Known as widgets, near live data can be seen on the individual pages for each recycling centres and offer an improved experience for residents of Hertfordshire. Information including container availability, queue time to access the sites now supplement the existing live queue cams to inform residents to best plan their timing of their visit. Investment in new compaction technology has seen significant impacts on the efficiency of this service, saving in the region of 477 journeys by HGVs used to empty containers, the equivalent of 12,400 miles and a significant carbon saving. Planned service improvements outlined in section 8 of the report include working with developers to adapt new technology to the benefit of residents. A trial underway at Ware Recycling Centre will see the installation of hardware connecting to the Internet of Things, which will provide real-time accurate data for display in the widgets on the website. In providing these improvements within our service area, we are also supporting the development of the Internet of Things in the county, which will bring benefits to other areas of the council using this network, including social care colleagues. Since receiving confirmation from JCB that all of our existing plant is able to operate on hydrogenated vegetable oil, also known as HVO or biodiesel, we're now in the process of procuring a contract for its supply. The expected benefits include cutting our carbon emissions by up to 95% of our current levels. Procurement is also underway to expand the fleet of JCBs to further improve our efficiency and reduce our environmental impact. Within the next few months, we will launch our first commercial waste acceptance offering. Businesses will be able to access competitively charged, fully compliant waste recycling facilities at the Ware Recycling Centre. With thanks to colleagues in public health for making the funding available, we will soon be installing automatic external defibrillators or AEDs at all recycling centres. These will be added to the ambulance service database of available emergency devices during our operational hours for use by anyone in the local communities. Site developments carried out over the last year and discussed in section 9 of the report include the reopening of a newly developed recycling super site at Ware. An exemplar in site design, the new site offers residents the opportunity to dispose of most waste at ground level, removing the need to climb steps while carrying waste items. It also benefits from a purpose-built reuse shop, which, since reopening in line with the government's easing of lockdown measures and the restrictions on non-essential retail, has proven to be commercially successful. In May this year, the Waterdale Recycling Centre closed temporarily to receive phase 1 of a development plan to improve the facility for local residents. A new site layout and clearer signage has been well received by those using the site. In line with the reopening of Waterdale in May, the 3 largest sites in the recycling centre network started to open 7 days a week, offering improved access to recycling facilities for residents. Further benefits included noticeable reduction in queues on the local highways outside of these facilities. Plans to further develop the network in the short and medium term are highlighted in section 10 and the associated appendices of the report. The improvements will see reduced downtime of the service by allowing better planned HGV and plant operations at the same time as further improving existing health and safety management. Capital applications have been made for Bishop Stortford and Berkhamsted recycling centres and are awaiting approval through the Council's integrated plan process for 22-23. As I previously referred to, the reuse shops in the recycling centre service are proving to be successful. 3 reuse shops at Ware, Waterdale and Harpenden are returning reuse tonnages up to 7% higher than previous arrangements, with income similarly improved. Since writing of of this report, we have been successful in being awarded a grant of £90,000 from the Distributor Take Back Scheme, which funds the collection and recycling of waste electrical and electronic equipment. These funds will be used to develop testing capabilities for electrical items to allow us to offer them for resale. It is anticipated that this will boost income and performance, as well as offering increased local employment opportunities. In addition to the financial and environmental benefits of the reuse service, we are proud to have been able to contribute to a number of local schools and charity organisations. By donating bikes and furniture, we have been able to contribute to the development of local children and asylum seekers, providing opportunities they might otherwise not have had. A community repaint scheme will soon be rolled out across the recycling centre network, making reusable paint available to residents and community groups free of charge. The service continues to develop its social value offerings by, for example, working with Project Positive, run by Amazing Apprenticeships in partnership with the County Council. Apprenticeships will be offered to young care leavers to work in a reuse service, offering work and life experience and a positive start to adult life. Recycling Centre Network performance throughout the first year of in-house operation has been difficult to objectively compare with recent years. The financial circumstances of Amy operating the service under contract until October 2021 and the COVID pandemic have resulted in an unusual baseline against which to draw comparisons. It is noticeable that performance had suffered through years 19, 20 and 2021. But with the lifting of societal restrictions in line with government guidance and the impacts of the benefits of a directly delivered service, performance is showing a strong recovery since February 21. The service's performance in terms of complaints and compliments is similarly difficult to compare with Amy's tenure. Prior to direct delivery of the service, the council were only informed of customer contact where a resident made a formal complaint, what we would know as a level 1 complaint. The Waste Management Unit now record and trend the levels of complaints and compliments of all types and levels, producing an inequitable comparison to previous conditions. In working to produce a new baseline on which we can work to improve, we have also begun monitoring Google reviews of our service. You can see from figure 9 in the report that with Google data included, compliments consistently exceed complaints. Another notable pattern in complaint data is the spike during the pandemic. Analysis of the nature of the complaints point to a dissatisfaction with the level of controls that were necessary to help prevent further spread of the coronavirus, rather than a lack of professionalism in delivery of the service. Financially, although challenging, the service is predicted to be delivered on budget to the end of this financial year through the use of the settlement agreement with Amy. Additional IP funding has already been identified and allocated for next year, and if successful, a number of capital investment programmes aim to deliver further improvements in the medium term. There are no equality impacts concerning this information-only paper. The recommendation at section 3 of the report is to note the contents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and both Matt and myself are available for any questions.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Matt. I think a great deal of progress has been made in a year. I've picked up on the teamwork, the IT, elements of carbon reduction, community engagement, a number of things there. So open now to comments and questions from members. So I think Ben was first.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you, Matt, Andrew. I haven't got a question. I just wanted to say, the challenges have been huge, as Eric was saying, but you're doing, I think it sounds like a really fantastic job in turning this thing round. And, I'm just so blown away by the imagination and ambition that you guys are showing in really kind of really reaching out in different ways. It's brilliant. So, keep it up. I'm really excited by it. It's great.
Thank you for that, Ben. I'm sure that's appreciated. Next is Steve Jarvis.
Yeah, and yes, there's some excellent things going on, and my personal experience, which may or may not be representative of using the centres, is that it's just so much easier to use. The staff appear to be motivated to help people, whereas sometimes in the past they appeared motivated to get as many people to leave as possible. So there's a big transformation, I think, in the way in which they're dealing with people. A couple of questions. I mean, I think in terms of the reuse, there's some really great stuff going there, but I wonder what we're doing to promote that and to ensure that people know what there is in these places, because most people's first destination when they want to buy something is not going to be the recycling centre. And similarly, we don't want them driving from one to another to look to see if we've got what they want. So how are we promoting what we've got to make those more successful?
Do you want to pause there?
Yeah,
pause
sure.
there, Steve, just for a minute, because I want to add to the question, because I know in visiting one of them, I heard that actually quite a lot of people turning up with things are diverted by staff who say actually that can be resold. So I'd like to add that to your question, Steve. Do you want to take that, Matt or Andy?
Yes, happy to, Chairman. I think it's fair to say that certainly the period of time covered by this report and throughout the pandemic, like any non-essential retail, the sites have been closed, and so it's been a somewhat truncated sort of delivery of the function, that part of the function at least. So each of the reuse stores does have its own Facebook page, which is where they tend to do the majority of their social media advertising. It's largely just based around that at the moment. We're conscious also of supplementing existing charitable organisations and the like in the local area. But like I said, we are hugely ambitious about the potential that this can deliver. We feel like we've dipped the toe in the water so far around some of the social added value aspects as well. So certainly, given the funding that we were successful in achieving, we hopefully will expand things like an electrical reuse offer, which again will enable us to do promotions at the time on a steady basis, and in terms of a communication strategy to improve awareness and acknowledgement of the centres themselves. But Chairman's absolutely right. A lot of the material we're actually getting at the moment is purely diverted from engaging more with the site staff about what materials we do want, what there is demand for, and we've got a van and a driver that goes around now and is making regular collections to collect more material.
Great, thank you. Your second question.
My other question related to the commercial waste service, which I mean I think is also a good thing to do. So long as it at least covers its costs, it potentially allows the council to spread its overheads of a larger operation, and provides a way for businesses to dispose of things. But I wonder, are we making this easy to use? There are lots of very small businesses who don't generate much waste, and it's difficult for them to dispose of it properly. Are we making it easy enough for people to use this service so they will?
So it's in development at the moment. The intention is to develop a booking system, and we'll trial it at the Ware Recycling Centre initially. Being the flagship site now across the network, it's large enough. The booking system will enable us to tweak numbers of appointments that may come through, so as not to interfere with supply of material or availability for residents. We think it will certainly wipe its face, but it will be cost effective. And there would be different price points for different materials being delivered. So, for example, if you are, garden waste might be cheaper for us to dispose of than mixed residual waste, and those commercial users that want to separate their material will be charged accordingly, with materials like cardboard or green waste being cheaper than a mixed load they just want to get rid of. We anticipate weeks rather than months in terms of implementation of that trial. But it is new to us. It is operated elsewhere, and we've done a huge amount of research in the background to try and understand what works and what doesn't. We are conscious of a number of different competing aspects of delivering that service at the moment.
I mean, I assume it's targeted at small and micro businesses rather than larger ones that would have their own disposal arrangements in place already.
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Tim.
Thank you very much, Chair.
My question sort of basically thank you very much, Matt, and thank you very much, Andy, for a great report. And it does certainly seem like there's great progress this year, so well done to yourselves on that. I was going to ask a question about staffing and staff challenges, because I understand there has been staff challenges, which is not too surprising when people have been tupied over going to a new employer. There's been the stress of COVID. There's going to be the stress of members of the public visiting and causing stress at the sites and things like that. And I appreciate you've got sort of staff workshops in place, improving staff communications. But how far have we recovered from the challenges of the staffing situation? I appreciate the staff numbers have gone up, overtime's gone down, and that's where the budget comes in. But how's it going on staffing in general? I'd say that in general, there's a positive picture to be painted, certainly in terms of our increased support and engagement. We're trying to get the site supervisors out there with Wi-Fi enabled access across the network to support and be on site. That's certainly helping. The staff survey and the feedback we received from that, as detailed in the report, has been overwhelmingly positive about working for the council and the transition from their former employer. But it is a work in progress in terms of recruiting new people in the current climate is a real challenge. And the report alludes to the fact that we've had some difficulties in terms of both attracting people to interviews and also because of the levels of pay as well, some criticism from members of the public and on social media, which have been sort of disappointing to hear. So it is a work in progress, but I'm confident that progress is being made and the support is being provided and communication channels are far improved from what was previously the case.
Yeah. Can I just come back on that? I do appreciate in any organisation, staff retention, staff recruitment is always a challenge, so it is always a work in progress. And I'd reiterate what Steve Jarvis said. My recent visits down there, and I have been down there a few times, I find them much more helpful than they were under the Amy contract.
Great. Okay, thank you for that, Tim. If you've finished, can you take your hands down? Jeff, I think, was next. Jeff Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, I just wanted to mention once again the reuse shops. Yeah, I think they are a great idea. I do wonder whether they need a bit more in terms of promotion. I appreciate that they haven't been able to be opened since lockdown, etc. Yeah, I just wonder. I mention it to people, and they say, "Oh, didn't know such a facility exists." So good to see that these will be spread around all the sites eventually. I just wondered whether you've got any figures you can share with us. I think you mentioned that they're commercially successful. I just wondered, just out of interest, what sort of figures are you getting at the reuse shops? And also just to mention, yeah, the AEDs, I didn't realise about that, having AED defibrillators at each site. Excellent idea, I think, very good. And I think I'm right in saying that these are funded via the reuse shops. I think that was the message I got. I could be wrong there. And then just finally, as Matt's aware, I've always had concerns. We've still got one site still to open in Buntingford, so it's just good to see that we are looking actively for a new location for that. So it's just really just to give that a shout. So thanks for Matt for what you and the team are doing on that. But yeah, the main question really was just if you've got any figures to share on the reuse shops.
Who's doing that? You and that, Matt?
Yes, had to. The model of operation of the reuse shops under Hertfordshire is different from Amy. Amy would operate what they term pop-up shops with cash sales at every site. I think we recognised that perhaps they weren't achieving the full level of income that they would have, and there's a number of elements of compliance that we would be concerned about materials leaving the site, which wouldn't be recorded. So firstly, operating during a pandemic, we had the operating model where we would do a milk round and deliver to the reuse shops. The reuse shops could be set up in terms of a COVID safe environment with sanitisers, limited numbers of people in the stores and space spacing throughout. We had quarantine areas on each site for materials prior to being advertised for resale and cleaning as necessary. So our operating model has been different. We have recently got figures that we are receiving in the order of twice the amount of income that the previous AMI model generated with their way of working it. And as I mentioned, they were hugely ambitious in terms of introducing not only electrical sales, but also looking for online sales, click and collect that type of function. The projects are being worked up in the background, eBay style sales for certain items as well. So the staffing levels are very different, which is why it's difficult for me to give you exact figures, Councillor Jones. So the report says that we've got 2.2 FTE previously with AMI. Employees running reuse. We're up to 5 and we still have 3 vacancies to recruit to. When we open the shop, the new Chewing Road, Welwyn Garden City Recycling Centre, we will be designing another facility in that, and I have to staff that up as well. So while not giving you exact details, hopefully gives you a flavour of some of the challenges of the reuse, but it has been successful with more material diverted, which is particularly pleasing. On the AED's point, just to clarify, the funding was from public health rather than the reuse store. We bid into a fund, and I'm pleased that they supported us. And on the local matter of the Buntingford store, absolutely apologise or share frustration about not being able to update on site search activities as we had intended to before the end of the calendar year. But the next meeting, I believe, in February, and I really hope that we'll be able to provide an update at that meeting.
Thank you very much for that.
And Matt, I guess there is also, as you implied, a sensitivity around not competing with local charities who may be doing much the same thing. It's about striking a balance, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Next question is Judy.
I didn't really have a question, but I did want to add my thanks, gratitude, and frankly amazement at the content of the report, the amount of imagination that's been shown in taking back this service, and the patience actually that some staff have been forced to show. It's been an amazement to me, the sorts of things that people get angry about and don't get angry about in the middle of a pandemic, and anger about not being able to immediately recycle the entire contents of your house. Seems to be a very big anger thing. So my thanks to everybody who's had to cope with that. I've seen it myself in Letchworth. I've seen obstacles placed in the way and all sorts of ghastliness. So just thanks to everybody from the Labour group as well.
Thanks, Judy. So impatience when you've got nothing much better to do anyway is really what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. Phil Williams. Phil, you're mute.
Yeah, got it now. Thanks very much for that. Great report, as everybody said, and well done on taking it back in-house. And glad to hear the anecdotal stories of the staff morale raising. I think that's one of the major benefits of getting it back in-house, which will take sickness down and just general well-being and ambience of the whole site. There's a couple of questions that come to mind. Over the last 12 months and before, probably before more so than the last 12 months, but do you have any details of what hard plastics, a lot of them were going into the skips that would go into landfill over the last couple of years, has that reduced now that it's come back in-house, or are we still having the same problems? There is another question, but I'll do that one first if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, happy to answer that one. I don't know exact numbers for you, Councillor Williams, in terms of the tonnage over the last 12 or 24 months, but what we have got is a direct ability to approach staff now with the specification that's required. I think certainly operating during the pandemic, not being able to handle people's material, you can see as the report evidences a dip in performance, and that was evidenced nationally and regionally. It's not surprising when you're being a lot of material thrown at you and you're unable to really engage as you should be able to. But sensitive improvements that we've seen will include materials like rigid plastic in terms of improvements in performance. but we are able to go out there now and directly ask people, this is exactly what we want in this container, and we can hopefully provide them with the support and the tools they need to engage positively with residents to communicate the same. So I'm aware of less rejections for contamination. It won't be perfect, and we acknowledge more than anyone that we've got some way to go on many aspects of this service, but hopefully we'll see continued improvement.
Okay, and you have another question, Phil?
I do, yes. Well, it does make it a lot more dynamic, doesn't it? When it's a lot more, you can react to things so much quicker when we've got our own stuff in there. So well done on that again. The other question was regarding to getting new employees and retaining as well. Are we paying the national living wage, or offering the national living wage, or the national minimum wage?
Yeah, everybody employed by the council is in excess of the national living wage. I think they're in excess as well of the planned rise to £9.50 per hour.
Sorry, I missed that. Was it the national living or national minimum? You broke up there.
Well, I might be getting confused in terms of saying, but I think they're all over the national living wage. Was that the question that was asked?
It was whether it was the national living as opposed to the national minimum.
Are you coming in on that, Simon?
Yeah, just to say what Matt said, it is the national living wage rather than minimum.
That's great. Thank you very much, guys. Greatly appreciate that. Thanks. Well done.
I guess that's the council policy anyway, isn't it?
I think it is. I wouldn't swear to it, but I think it is, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Judy, have you finished, or is your hand up again? Otherwise, Steve Wortley.
No, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, quite a lot of the points actually that I was going to ask have actually already been made. Great report, really informative, and really I just want to echo some of my colleagues' comments. We had the what we thought was the brilliant idea during lockdown of having a big spring clean and throwing lots of stuff out. And when we got to the recycling centres, we found out that everyone had exactly the same idea. And when it was kind of like a perfect storm, wasn't it? Not everybody decided to do that. Plus, there was, a lot of people were told to work from home. So these guys are, guys and girls are going in and working when a lot of the country are at home, and at a time where everyone's suddenly deciding to use their services. So it's really just a thank you from myself, because it was a perfect storm. It was and as I say, I think they did a great job. And yes, there were queues, and yes, there were frustrations. And as Judy said, it's disappointing that people sitting around being paid with nothing to do, having a spring clean and a turnout can get so agitated. So it was really just a thank you for the report and a thank you for the time and effort and the way the teams carried out their duties during a really, really tough time. So thanks very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Steve. I think that's worth noting in the minutes, all the appreciation that members are expressing, but also Matt and Andy, if you can take that back to staff and mention that as well. So I think that's the end of comments and questions. So we were just asked to note the content of the report. So if you wouldn't mind all then going on to chat and then typing in noted or agreed or whatever you want to say. And that's agreed, so thank you all for that. And now we're going on to item 6, which is the recycling centre haulage arrangements. So for this one, I'd like to introduce Stuart Callan, who is a graduate management trainee, who will be signing during the presentation. And then I think it's Debbie, we've got Debbie there, who will then be interpreting on his behalf. So yeah, please start.
I hope everybody's well.
Thank you.
So Hertfordshire County Council, as a waste disposal authority, which is WDA under section 51 of the Environmental Protection Act, It provides and operates a network of 17 recycling centres for the use of its residents to dispose of their household waste. All RCs are operational with an exception of Buntingford, which still remains closed. An alternative service provision for the area is now being explored. So following the decision by Cabinet back in May 2020 to exit the agreement of the operation for the recycling centre by Amy, that was September 2020, a number of contracts were transferred to the council to ensure a smooth transition. This included the haulage contract, known as the Central Container Servicing Contract, which is due to expire on the 5th of March 2023. Under the haulage contract, the contractor is required to transport the recycling and waste to a number of disposal points. To inform the council on how best to provide the haulage services, a formal pre-procurement market engagement, otherwise known as a PPME, exercise was carried out in August 2021. The market response indicated that there would be an interest in bidding for the recycling centre haulage contract. The contract length of 7 years plus an extension was desirable, and it was seen as providing best value for the council. This is industry standard and linked to typical depreciation times of vehicles required for this service. Respondents indicated that sustainability gains or alternative fuels to diesel could be considered as part of the procurement. Strong indication from all respondents that lead times for mobilisation of the contract should be increased from a typical 6-month period to a minimum of 9 to 12 months as necessary. This is a result of supply issues stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic. The extended mobilisation period has potential issues for commencing a new contract from March 2023, and therefore a number of mitigation measures have been considered. So these are extending the existing contract for a short period, with the council taking increased cost and risk for maintenance of the existing vehicle fleet. Increasing the proposed initial term of the new contract and or permitting hire vehicles to be used in the early part of the contract. The decision on the most appropriate route will be will be made prior to the procurement going live. Let's talk about sustainability. Hertfordshire County Council's Sustainable Hertfordshire Strategy 2020 sets out the commitment to deliver clean air for all by 2030. In line with our 2019 air quality strategy, we will be promoting the uptake of low emission from vehicles to make Hertfordshire a cleaner, greener and more sustainable county. A 7-year contract from March 2023 will afford the council an opportunity to require bidders to provide a fleet of vehicles that operate with more sustainable fuel than the current use, which is diesel. The tender process will require the successful operator to work with the council to explore and trial options with the aim of introducing new technologies, fuel types, and vehicles at an appropriate time, subject to a robust business case, and in line with the next haulage contract period, which is 2030. So options appraisals. As identified in section 6 of the report, consideration has been given to a number of options for the delivery of this contract. Option 1, continuation of the current agreement. Option 2, in-house service provision. Option 3, local authority trading company. Or option 4, a pre-procurement of the current services. Following advice from finance and legal colleagues, option 1 and option 3 were immediately ruled out. Whilst option 2, in-house, has worked well for the recycling service centres, the haulage services were well managed by the private sector and currently taken into account the additional financial impact of direct delivery, the challenges of increasing in-house provision, and the significant risk profile of the services in the coming years. Continued operation by the private sector on this occasion is preferred. Conclusion. The PPME highlighted changes to the market, meaning significantly longer lead times. The well-documented current issues with driver availability, driver pay, and fuel costs are risks that are likely to increase. Contract costs and possible impact of future services provision. A range of mitigations include extending the existing contract term, increasing the proposed initial term for the new contract, and or permitting vehicle hire to be used in the early part of the contract. Further to option analysis work being undertaken and summarised in this report, it is proposed that a new procurement and suitable mitigations to allow the vehicle delivery time is the most appropriate way forward for this element of the RC services. Any pressures or savings arising from the new procurement will be managed through the Council's integrated plan process at the appropriate time. These risks have, alongside others, been considered in preparation for the end of the current arrangements. Recommendations to members: that the panel note the contents of this report and endorses the approach for a new procurement process as set out. That the panel note that due to the cost of services, the procurement will be entered into the Council's forward plan with a decision to award made in consultation with the executive member for the environment in accordance with the Council's constitution. Thank you very much, members.
Great, thank you very much, Stuart, and thank you very much, Debbie. And the timeline of activity is on table 4, which I think is on page 210 of the report. So quite a lot of activity to take place over the next few months, and then hopefully to start the mobilisation by the spring and then through to the year after. So let's take some questions. I don't see any hands up yet. Any questions from members, please? So Steve Jarvis.
Yeah, there's just one question. If we turn out to be successful at further reductions in the amount of a number of containers that need to be removed, either because we managed to expand the amount that goes to reuse, or we did more compaction, or we managed to minimise the amount people bring, does the contract tie us into a fixed level of costs, or so how does the contract work if the demand for these services changes over its life, as I suppose is the point I'm getting at?
Through you, Chairman, I'm happy to take that question.
Please go ahead.
So the contract documents are being prepared now, and we hope to go out to tender next month. The contract is based on a rate per mile rather than anything else. There's no guaranteed minimum tonnages or obligations to the market. So absolutely, the market needs to understand that our ambitions for waste minimisation, JCB, site layouts, compacting more materials, and the reductions that we've already seen, and hopefully we'll see more of in the future, will form a part of that, and it's their risk.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Ben?
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, it's a great report. I wondered whether there'd been any possibility of. I appreciate the challenges in getting cleaner vehicles, but I just wondered whether there were opportunities for broader coalitions, sort of outside the county, sort of possibly east of England, or just with neighbouring counties, for a sort of a coordinated approach to getting expensive technology, vehicle technology into operation.
Again, if I may, the report recognises, Councillor Chris, that the market is not particularly developed in this area yet. The provision of electrical vehicles for things like refuse collection is evident. It's emerging still. South Cams are a good example, and I know some districts and boroughs in Hertfordshire are starting to have some testing in early meetings. But it's unreliant. The subtleties of this service are that in order to keep it as effective and efficient as possible, often we will run very unsociable hours or absolutely sweats the asset to its maximum over the depreciation period. So we have a number of 24-hour operatives at the moment from the haulage contractor, and it does work well. So you can't use and charge a vehicle at the same time in simple terms. So we're headed at the moment for discussions. I'll give Stuart an opportunity to expand on those discussions in a second, around the types of fuel that are potentially going to be available. But the contract documents will require the contractors to work with us positively in terms of providing the most sustainable option. Stuart, do you want to expand for us on the conversations you've had with colleagues in the fire service and others, please?
Absolutely. A couple of months ago, Hertfordshire Fire Service switched to use GTL, which is called gas to fuel, gas to liquid. And it has reduced emissions by up to 80%. So they've recently started using this, and it has been very successful so far. So I'm starting to have a dialogue with them. I mean, they can do 30 tonnes in this particular fuel. So I am trying to liaise with them as much as possible to see whether we could use the same fuel. The only problem is they use a large storage bunker to store this fuel. And I don't know whether it would be possible for Hertfordshire to access that and we could share those supplies, which obviously could be a challenge. So we are exploring biomethane, which is another green sustainable fuel. And Asda uses this fuel. Ocado uses this fuel too. So again, we're at very, very early stages of this dialogue, and we are working really hard with our sustainability team to see where we can do this and what's possible and what we can consider. So that's my current conversations with those other stakeholders at present.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay with that, Ben, and it's just the theme generally is also discussed at the Hearts Waste Partnership in terms of how local authorities potentially could collaborate. And we discussed there the challenges around the emerging technologies. So it's a very live subject. Okay, Graham's next, I think.
You stole my thunder, Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should keep quiet.
2-3 weeks ago, the joint waste contract East and North Herts had a demonstration by electric vehicle refuse collection vehicles, and it's, as the chairman has just said, it's now firmly on the Hertfordshire Waste Partnership agenda, and we're looking at all the different possible scenarios. So, because contracts are coming up for renewal, and it'll be a case of how can we come together and purchase the correct vehicles and wherever the source of fuel will be throughout and it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, which I'm sure you're aware of. But thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Grove.
Absolutely.
We go to too many of the same things, don't we? Steve Jarvis again, I think.
Yes. I was just going to observe that, gas to liquid really shouldn't be the limit of our ambitions. It's not a zero carbon or anywhere near it fuel. It provides some air quality benefits, which clearly the fire service is benefiting from. But really, if we're looking at a contract that's going to last for 7 years, we need to be being a lot more ambitious than gas to liquid. And I'm sure we are.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
So if I've still got your hands up, Graham and Steve. Presumably you've completed your questioning. Yeah, and Graham? Okay, I'll assume you are. So that's it. I don't see any more questions. So many thanks, Stuart and Debbie and Matt. Stuart, you did tell us what the recommendations were, so I probably don't need to read them again. So members, if you could go on to chat, please, and note as requested. Thank you. Okay, so I've just had an indication that that's been agreed. So again, thank you very much. And again, thank you, Stuart and Debbie, for joining us. We're now going on to item 7, which is Sustainable Hertfordshire Central Fund, and it's an update on spend to date. And welcome Julie Greaves, who's Head of Sustainability.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Yes, this is an information item to let panel members know that we have been spending some money relating to the Sustainable Hertfordshire Central Fund. So just very quickly, as a little bit of excuse me, background, the Sustainable Hertfordshire Central Fund was set up after we had already approved the Sustainable Hertfordshire Strategy and Action Plan, and the fund was specifically created to deliver on the 9 central ambitions. The ambitions are set out in the report. I'm not going to go through all 9 of them, but a fundamental consideration of the bids that come into this particular central fund are that they need to help us deliver on those central ambitions and are related to a specific action that's already identified within the action plan. So the process was established using the existing financial regulatory requirements regarding some of the limits and also whether or not they're capital or revenue. But the process means that the bids are pulled together by service areas themselves on a particular pro forma. They're sent to the Sustainable Hertfordshire team. We look through them to see whether or not they do meet the objectives that we're seeking to deliver, and then they're taken to the Sustainable Hertfordshire Executive Board, which is made up, Executive Sustainable Hertfordshire board first, which is chaired by Mark Kemp, Director of Environment and Infrastructure, and we have representatives from all the directorates sitting on that particular board. Then they go forward to the Sustainable Hertfordshire Executive Board, which is Councillor Eric Buckmaster and Councillor Bob Deering, and then Directors of Environment, Infrastructure and Resources and Performance, so Mark and Scott. They will then be subject to scrutiny and whether or not we need to take them through further executive decision or key officer decision or cabinet decision, depending on the value, etc. So we've had 14 successful bids so far. We've run the bidding process on a monthly basis, and they are listed within the panel paper to date. We have got another few that are coming through the process at the moment that will go to board this Friday, and then executive members sign off in a couple of weeks' time. Just to remind you, we had a 2 million starting pot for revenue and a 10 million starting pot in terms of capital, and you'll see in section 2.5 there the funds remaining that can still be called upon. As I said, it's an information item. I'll just very briefly go through some of the bids that we have had, and just to say that this is a really positive report. You know, we've had a lot of applications come through this particular process. We've been able to look at them and been able to award some considerable funding. So the first one is around the Net Zero Schools programme. We absolutely need the help of consultants to deliver on the Net Zero School programme, and Mace have been very, very fundamental in helping us to deliver the planning surveys as well as the structural surveys of any work, and also in terms of the carbon calculations. So they have been invaluable to us to be able to progress that particular programme of activities. The next one, HCC property waste audit, that specifically relates to HCC properties. I need to make that clear. It's not about the Waste Disposal Authority or the Waste Planning Authority. This is about us as an organisation and understanding the waste that we are producing across our over 200 council properties. And the results of the audit will help us to identify operations where we can minimise that waste that's being produced. Queen's Green Canopy, I think we already presented a paper on QGC to previous panel. We've had thousands of pledges come forward via QGC, and we have actually been to some planting ceremonies already. It's been very successful, and we are still seeing pledges come in on a daily basis. So that's a really fantastic programme that we're continuing to work on and will carry forward for another year. Then we've got the air quality monitoring software. Again, this is was a revenue bid, and we are in the process of doing the market assessments for going out to tender for the software. This is a really important investment for HCC because we want to be able to understand what's going on across Hertfordshire, and so we can actually map what's going on and monitor what is going on, which will then help us to target specific comms campaigns around behavioural change, for example. The next one, Waste Disposal Authority carbon baseline. As you'll be aware, we had a Hertfordshire County Council baseline done and recalculated. This is a specific piece of work looking at just the Waste Disposal Authority, so it's a much more detailed look at what goes on with regard to Waste Disposal Authority functions, and then identifying opportunities for how we can reduce specific carbon emissions from this service area. Next is a county-wide project via the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership in preparation for the Environment Bill and the requirements to deliver biodiversity net gain. We've started work on a biodiversity baseline. So the 25,000 is our contribution to that county-wide project that's being funded via HCCSP. The next one is highways hedgerow replacement, really considerable project to plug the gap in existing highways, hedgerow, and also create new ones, and that's over a 3-year period. The next one is another joint project co-funded via Waste Aware and also our colleagues in public health, and it's about the delivery of 180 sustainable period ambassadors across our schools in Hertfordshire. So really, really pleased that that's a county-wide project, and we're working with all of our District Borough colleagues on that one as well. The next one is the real estate. This previously called the Real Estates Improvement Plan is now going to be called the Real Estates Strategic Plan or Strategic future plan, and it's looking at future aspirations for the rural estate. So again, a really important piece of work, and it is really about pulling in consultants and staff and resources to help us identify potential opportunities across the rural estate to link in with the Sustainable Hertfordshire ambitions. Next one is around COP26, and this is specifically relating to community engagement. We really want to do some community engagement events. We haven't been able to because of COVID. So we saw COP26 as a real opportunity to learn from what's going on up in Glasgow and to host some events that are linked to what's coming out from Glasgow and further forward. So I'll take this opportunity to give a plug for the Eco Fair. Yeah, you should have all received an invite this morning for the Hertfordshire Sustainable Hertfordshire Eco Fair. It's going to be taking place at County Hall 27th of November. We've got a lot of people interested in hosting stalls at that particular event. It's about showcasing what we're doing as a county council, inviting all our district and borough colleagues to showcase what they're doing, and also bringing in external organisations to display what can be done. So that's taking place on the 27th of November. And then we've got some future planned events around COP in January, specifically focusing on a youth conference of the people, and then further engagement over the spring. So this particular fund is specifically for community engagement events. And then we've got the school's energy project. This has been running for a little while now. They've already completed 100 pilot project schools, and this is about expanding that and really pushing it out across a number of different schools, another 100 schools. So that financial bid has been approved via our processes. It may need to go through key officer decision record and possibly cabinet, but that's for property and resources to take that through. But for us, we have agreed the funding. And then the Crowdfunder Platform, again, is a really exciting development here. We've got an existing Crowdfunder Platform for Hertfordshire County Council that is run via Hertfordshire Communities. And this is a new platform that will be specifically for Sustainable Hertfordshire and the delivery of community projects. The community projects will have to fund it themselves as well. It's not about us just giving them 100% of the money. They have to show that the crowd are interested in delivering this particular action or programme, and it has to meet our own Sustainable Hertfordshire objectives as well. And then the County Council will provide some funding to support. So that's a really exciting project we're hoping to launch via our Eco Fair, actually. We're just sorting out the background of it in terms of the web pages and payment platforms, etc. And then the next one is about consultancy work. There's a few here that are based on consultancy. So climate risk assessment work, really fundamental piece of work looking at potential need to adapt for our services. So, for example, looking at the potential scope of risks associated with changing climates to Hertfordshire County Council and the services we provide. So that's a consultancy-based bid. And then the next two, actually, the carbon baseline work and the county-wide emissions work, again, are consultancy-based. Two separate issues there. One is a review of our own work in terms of a critical friend review of the action plan that we've got, and preparing a trajectory for us to be able to meet our existing ambitions. And then in addition to that, a county-wide look at emissions, and then working again via HCCSP on a reduction strategy. So there's quite a lot of partnership work going on across all of those bids. So those are the bids that we've received to date and that have been successful. Spending will be monitored, and we'll keep an eye on the totals as we go over the next couple of months, and we'll report back to panel probably I would say in the new year as to how successful the spend and the current pots are looking. We've also provided a very brief update in terms of public sector decarbonisation works. I know that you will have received a detailed email individually about the programme of works. Just to say that things are really pushing ahead with this particular programme. We've got a lot of images now coming into us of successful completions of cavity wall installations, photovoltaics on school roofs, and also double glazing or triple glazing where that's been appropriate. So we've really got some good news stories coming in from our own estate as well as the school's estate about decarbonisation and looking to really improve the efficiency of our buildings. And during the statements that have come out via COP and pre-COP and also via the budget, we are understanding that the PSDS fund is likely to exist for at least another 3 years. So we're hopeful that we continue to apply for funding through that particular mechanism. It may be slightly different in that we might need to make sure we're doing a bit more match funding than previous rounds. But again, we'll keep members informed as to how that's going and whether or not we've been successful in any further rounds of SALEX funding. That's it. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions. As I say, it's an information item report.
Thank you, Julie. That's really interesting. So I've got feedback.
Oh, sorry. Shall I?
Yeah, I'll carry on. Yeah, so a lot of interesting projects. As Julie says, the funding that can be available that we can bid for can be substantial, and we've seen that with the SALEX funding and what we can do with such a large amount of funding. And the other important things, the carbon baseline review and trajectory, very important to see how we're going towards our ambitions towards 2030. So I think all of these are very diverse initiatives and projects, which I think from feedback I get from you, Julie, reflects the buy-in from departments across the council. So yeah, a lot there. Happy to take questions now. So we've got Ben and Steve again first in. So Ben first.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry to try and ask questions all the time.
I know it's terrible, isn't it?
Thanks very much, Julie. Really appreciate it. Lots of great things there. That's very exciting. I kind of, I'm sure like many of us, I just want the council to spend as much money as it can quickly on these things, obviously in a useful way, but I just want an acceleration. And I just wondered whether there is an opportunity, and I know there's a challenge in getting, I think I've mentioned this before, a challenge in getting departments to apply for funding, but because of just, time constraints. And I wondered whether there are things that you can do to encourage departments, groups to apply, incentives, I don't know, vouchers, wine, I don't know, whatever. Are there ways in which that we could encourage the departments, give people an extra boost to encourage them to go for this money and spend it much more quickly? That was my first question. And my second question was thinking about the grant application. So you mentioned the PSDS funding, but I know there's a lot of other grants out there that sort of come up and suddenly you're scrambling to get people to have time to apply for those grants. Is there an opportunity to get someone else or another team, additional personnel to actually be doing that full time? I mean, you may have already, but can we expand that? Is there an opportunity to do that? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Happy to answer those, Chair. So the first one in terms of encouragement, so we've done a round of meetings whereby my staff have gone to every directorate and team meetings and service meetings to plug the fund itself. We are getting a lot of bids coming our way. They are subject to quite a lot of scrutiny before they get to board and then before they get to executive member sign-off. So 14 is the ones that that have been successful, have gone through all that scrutiny process and made it through. We are getting a lot of bids. Some of them we send back for a little bit more work and then they come back and make it through. So happy to do a further round of encouragement and engagement with our directorates, but we are seeing a lot of applications come through and we are running the bidding process on a monthly basis. So we're seeing about 5 or 6 per month that go through all of the scrutiny and then make it through to the board process. It is quite resource intensive from our side of things and also from finance. We obviously make sure that they have proper due process in terms of financial scrutiny as well. But yeah, happy to do another round of encouragement and engagement with directorates. That's not a problem at all. We can do that. And we'll do that via obviously senior managers as well and filtering it down through their particular channels. In terms of a member of staff, we're currently working up our applications for the IP. And one of the things we've put in the IP is we would really value a specific person doing that horizon scanning and identifying opportunities that we can apply for. And actually that goes twofold, not just for us as HCC, but we've also suggested that via HCCSP. So HCCSP was successful in, again, partnership funding a new post that is for the partnership. That person, so Helen, is due to start in December, and part of her role is to do that horizon scanning for HCCSP. So for us in HCC, we're going through due process and seeking some additional funds to be able to get that resource in place.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. And there's a value out there, isn't there, that having the appropriate resource means that we can bid for more funding at the same time as actually processing more bids. So something to think about for all of us. Okay, Steve next.
Thanks. Yeah, there's some good things in here, and as Ben said, it's important to make sure that looking for things that can be done to improve sustainability becomes part of what everyone does all the time. A couple of questions. One of the largest items is certainly in terms of revenue, is the rural estates review. And I'm not entirely clear exactly for the amount we're spending, what we're getting out of that. It sounded a bit like it was a review of the rural estates that might just happen to include a review of their sustainability contribution. And that seems like an undesirable thing. Are we actually getting value for money out of it, I guess, is the question there. And the second one related to the public sector decarbonisation scheme. So then if you want to answer the first one, and then I'll come back with the second one.
Yes, if I may. Yes, so the rural estate, they already have an existing rural estates plan, which covers a vast expanse of physical land, which is currently a combination of tenanted farmers and in-hand land and other green areas of the estate that doesn't include the built estate, which is separate and actually subject to a completely different review process. So the Rural Estates Improvement Plan to be reviewed is a considerable piece of work. We're talking about going out and doing lots of survey work, engaging with tenants, and understanding the opportunities for how we could manage our estate differently. That is a considerable piece of work. Yes, it does involve bringing in consultants to help us to deliver that particular piece of work, but it also includes a specific staff resource in the rural estate from our side of things, HCC side of things, to make sure that we are fully taking on board all of the Sustainable Hertfordshire ambitions and trying to look at opportunities across the rural estate to deliver those ambitions. There's a considerable piece of work just relating to carbon offsetting, for example, and just relating to the potential for biodiversity offsetting and biodiversity net gain. Those three elements in themselves are a considerable piece of work, and that will form part of the rural estates review, as well as we're having specific conversations with our consultants, WSP, to help us more broadly look at biodiversity net gain and also carbon offsetting and biodiversity offsetting. So I appreciate it looks like a big amount of money, but it's a massive task, and one that we really would like to see delivered fairly speedily to help us then identify opportunities on our own land.
Okay. I mean,
before you come in with your next question, Simon, you wanted to add to that?
Well, just to add that actually the panel may want to ask for that review when it's complete to be presented to this panel, even though we're not responsible. But I'm sure the directors has pleasure will be more than happy to come along and talk through the outputs from that review. I mean, I'm sure we'd all be interested to see. But yeah, it is a lot of money, but it's a different type of review, and Julie sort of outlined that. Big area of work, so, and a very important area of work for us because we're landowners in Hertfordshire.
Thank you.
I think that would be useful. I mean, I guess some aspects of the review will be terribly site specific, and I think that's not what this panel is interested in, but we're interested in what the rural estate in general can achieve, and where there's, I guess there will be a need to do some more work beyond the initial review in some places. My other question related to the public sector decarbonisation scheme, and I think as Julie, you said, there are likely to be further rounds, but and as always, they dream up more rules for every round. They make the criteria tougher every time. Are we in a position as a result of what we've done to look at what we think we're going to achieve from what's currently funded, and consequently how much more we need to fund either via PSDS or in other ways. For example, to complete the rollout of those changes across the school estate. And in some cases, some schools we've done a lot of work. Others we've really only taken the first steps. We've done some double glazing or something like that. And it's important to do that because you get a comparatively big return. But if we're going to deliver a zero carbon school estate, we're going to have to go a long way beyond that. So has this helped us assess what we still need to get funded to roll that out across the estate?
Yes, so just the first thing to say is that the PSDS rounds, we've had 3 successful applications so far, which has given us the 23.5 million, and that the 3 applications formed one particular whole, and each of those were different in terms of their subject areas. So some of them covered skills, some of them covered fabric, so double glazing, for example, and some of them covered renewables such as PV. The next round that we have applied, or at least put an expression of interest in for, is specifically relating more to boiler replacements, and that does look at match funding. So the next few rounds, however rounds there may be over the next 3 years, could be very specific on certain items. We don't know that yet, but in combination, yes, they will help us to decarbonise the not just the school estate, but the HEC estate. So it's very difficult to say over the lifetime of PSDS what it would help us achieve in terms of just decarbonisation, because the bids are for different types of thing. We'd have to have a look at obviously the carbon baseline associated with the school estate, and then take off what's been reduced in terms of the works that we've delivered so far, which we can do. And I would suggest, as Simon offered with the rural estate, I would suggest that we come back with a full report on PSDS delivery in the new year, because the funds that we've got in the bank at the moment should be spent by March 2022, and I think that's probably a really good time to do a bit of a stock take to say, you know, this was the officer input, this was the amount of money that HCC helped to provide, and this is what we got in terms of our value from the grant, and this is the amount of emissions reduced and the renewables delivered. So at this moment in time, we're still delivering all of those projects and programs, 148 or 49 different projects and programs. So I haven't got a figure for you at this moment in time. I think that is something that we should do possibly in January once we've finished this particular round of works.
Okay. So just come back on that. I mean, you know, I think we all understand that decarbonising, and I'm concentrating on the school estate because that's the biggest bit, and in some ways the most difficult bit to deal with, that there's a substantial task to do that. And at some stage, we need an estimate of what it's going to cost to achieve.
Yes.
So we can go out and get the money to do it, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, that was your second part of your question. Apologies. Yes, there has been some preliminary work done with MACE via Children's Services to have that kind of scenario approach, looking at a number of different scenarios and a number of different options for the full decarbonisation of the school estate. That's work in progress at the moment, and again, I think that might be something that we want to bring back through this particular panel. I've just asked Children's Services if they are happy to present to the Sustainable Hertfordshire board in December. So maybe we need to see what they've done so far to then come back to panel again, maybe in the new year.
Okay.
That's good, thanks. Yeah. I guess, Julie, there's an element of ongoing maintenance upgrades.
Yes.
So that as things come to the end of their life, they're replaced with more sustainable items.
Exactly, and that's part of the options work that MACE are looking at. So, for example, you could say, OK, you know what, as of today, we're going to replace everything. Well, that's going to be extremely costly. But what happens if you actually program in the normal repairs and maintenance regime and start to replace electric instead of nearly said diesel, sorry, gas or oil in terms of boilers. So, you know, taking into account the fact that we've already got an R&M process and an R&M budget. So is it about expanding that R&M budget over the next few years to take into account the fact that you're switching out switching in air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps, or switching from gas or oil to electric, for example. So that's part of the work that is ongoing with MACE.
Okay, thank you. All good. I don't see any other questions. So thank you for that, Julian. Thank you for all
Thank
the
you.
questions we've had. So now the panel is asked to note the content of the report, diversity of the bids received and supported and progress made to date. So if we could go into chat, please. Thank you. So that's item 7 agreed. So thank you, everyone. Item 8, any other part 1 business? There is none. There's no part 2. The date of the next meeting is 3rd of February at 10 o'clock. That concludes the meeting then. So again, thank you to everyone. And I'll see you next time. So we're finishing promptly at 12:05. So again, thank you and see you all soon.
Right.